Live and we are recording. Hello, everyone, and thank you again for tuning in to Virtual Coffee with Ben. My name is Ben Blackman. I am the Director of Development for RIDG. That's Royal Innovation Design Group, a group of innovation consultants that's based in St. Petersburg, Florida. Before we get started today, I want to encourage everybody, as I always do, to visit the RIDG YouTube channel. That's RIDG. That's our YouTube channel. You can also go to our Facebook page as well for all of our great content. You can learn about how RIDG can help your company innovate more effectively. This show, Coffee with Ben, focuses on how companies strategically plan for the future, how they create a strong culture for their employees. And I am super excited to welcome back today very familiar face for those of you that have seen the show before or know anything about our company. She puts the R in RIDG. Her name is Michelle Royal. She's the founder and chief innovation officer of RIDG. Thanks for joining me this morning, Michelle. Well, we are approaching the last few days of what will undoubtedly be considered one of the most crazy and memorable years of our lives. I'm curious, as we sit here at the end of December, what are your initial thoughts about 2020 looking back? And then I'm also curious, do you anticipate if we move forward 10, 20 years from now and you're looking back on this year, do you think you'll have a different perspective on it?
Well, distance always creates a slightly different perspective. So I like that you use the word memorable, first of all. And thanks, Ben, for having me back. I know it's our show. I always appreciate whenever I'm invited. So 2020, certainly I had a whole list of other words that I thought described 2020, from challenging to focusing, reevaluation, consuming, uncertain, shifting, fatigue. Those were all of the different things that kind of I thought of whenever I thought of 2020. And in the world of business, we aren't even 100% sure what the total impact is going to be. Therefore, 10 to 20 years from now, we almost need that perspective to be able to harness what can be happening right now. But what we can do is we can look at the past and we can see what happened during other eras of great transformation. So if we know anything, it's a year that is catalyzing great transformation. And transformation is not for the weak of heart or the weak of mind. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because I believe that at the heart of all humanity is a sense of resilience. And we believe deeply in that resilience and our ability to take what is a difficult situation and move forward. So I certainly know from experience that I will look back on 10 to 20 years from now and see it differently. For example, it was 2006, 14 years ago, almost 15 years ago now, whenever I was going through a personal life transformation, that I embarked on the true professional career of innovation consulting, and took all of the skills that I had and repurposed them for this greater mission. So I do believe that there's a lot of individuals. That's why I think reevaluation, focusing are really important words right now, because when we're, and fatigue as well, when we're tired, we just don't have time or strength to really deal with any crap, or to really deal with anything that's not serving or useful to us. And it makes us evaluate everything we might have brought into our lives or our businesses that wasn't really serving the greater mission. It makes us reevaluate decisions. It makes us reevaluate everything. And with the right tools and the right frame of mind, we can use that reevaluation as a catalyst for growth.
That's interesting. Now, I know, in your role, you're working with a lot of other businesses,
Yeah.
and you have a keen eye on innovative thinking. I'm curious, are there any particular companies that you feel really stood out in 2020 in terms of how they responded to the pandemic?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So, so there's small businesses, there's businesses that are in that mid market. There's large global brands. So I want to talk about a few, it's obvious. I mean, if we're on LinkedIn, it's obvious that the companies that really won. Okay, so there's a few companies that really won,
Zoom?
meaning they scaled at a rapid rate. Those being the virtual meeting or the virtual work companies. They really, uh, I think, had an unexpected surge, and there were certainly challenges that whole new innovations could yield for them. But those companies, fine. Let's understand that they grew to serve a market, which is great. Um, in our world, I'll give an example of a dentistry client, Straighten Up Orthodontics, who used our tools for innovation, our discipline for communication, and the ability to evaluate what was happening in the context. And they took constraints and opened up a whole new market by matching individuals, people out in the world, their need for one-on-one consultation, even if it was virtual, and their desire to continue to solve challenges that had to do with oral health, their teeth. And they could have been drowned in the market because of the closure of dentistry offices early on in the pandemic. And instead, they crafted a whole new strategy, and now not only have a better work-life balance, they serve twice as many customers, and they were able to take this virtual in-person experience and provide a level of expertise to people who would never have it before because they were just buying things online without the guidance. So that's the kind of opportunity that's on hand for anyone who is small, medium, or large as a business. Is what is the mashup? 98% of all innovations in the world are a mashup of two things that currently aren't really coming together really well. So that's I think, a notable experience. Another company would be one of the largest digital enablement companies, AVISBL, that supports the workplace, the physical workplace, the digitization of the workplace. And as an organization, their innovation efforts were 100% about responding to their clients as they were going to these virtual platforms, no longer in the office. But they're really solving the problems around the future of work. And so I think what you want in the core of innovation is what Adam Stelzner, who wrote the book The Right Kind of Crazy. It feels very crazy out there. We need the right kind of crazy. The right kind of crazy right now in an organization is one that is able to look at the challenges, know that it's tough, know that there's unknowns within the problems, and be able to turn with you to look at that challenge and then go through the difficult process of solving for that challenge. The future of work overall, we'll talk about that in the trends, but it is transforming as we speak. We are in a great cauldron of mixing of ideas and technologies and people and performance and products and services. And we'll come out of this with whole new industries that are developed. Just look back at the recession in the companies. More than 50% of the companies on the S&P 500 didn't exist 10 years ago. That's what I know we're going to look back on in 10 years. A whole new mix of companies, and it could be more like 75% of the companies in the S&P 500 didn't exist today, but will exist 10 years from now.
So you mentioned trends. So let's turn the page, and 2020, for good, bad, and different, it's almost over. Let's look forward. 2021, what do you anticipate in terms of trends in the world of innovation? Anything that particularly excites you?
So there's the world of innovation trends, and then there's how companies apply innovation as a whole. And here's because we are in such a mixing environment, there's general skills around orienting around contextual changes. I mean, we just had, I think the US just had a relief bill that was released yesterday that's now being examined on, for lack of a better term, a global scale. And there's just a lot of opinions about what you trust and what you don't trust, which goes back to that right kind of crazy. In order for innovation to be successful, there has to be this environment of trust and respect, which means a tremendous amount of communication and level setting and evaluating. It's almost like the cliche of the blind touching the elephant. You know, everyone their eyes might be closed and they could be touching a whole different piece. Well, I feel a tree trunk, I feel a rope, and they're all touching the same thing. Therefore, you have to bring people, you have to gather together, you have to gather as much information as possible and as many different perspectives, which is really important in innovation. How you gain that perspective and that feedback really matters. So human-centered is a buzz term in business, being able to activate and really disseminate and collect the data around human experience is challenging, but there are tools and frameworks to be able to do that. For that reason, I was thinking of the story has to be backed by the system, and the system is the structure, and structure follows strategy. So if there is misalignment right now, because there are so many varying perspectives, because with the intensity of stress, there becomes an impatience for what some people might call flim flam, or I could use a more intense term, but just the things that aren't, they just don't have any patience for. There has to be a truth in the work. There has to be an authenticity or transparency. All of these things right now are considered buzzwords because the story, what is being espoused to the public, has to be backed by the system that supports it. And I think that's important as a trend when you look at the future of work, which we still don't understand the full implications. There are futurists who imagined that one day we'd have chips in our minds, and some of the work that we would be doing would be a lot of the things that we're doing today, like shopping for other people, or taking care of even digital products. There's just I'm thinking of this video that I saw of this future experience where someone had an ID a chip in their hand, and they're out in this like world where they have this AI screen that's showing them all of these ads and these different things, but the real world isn't at all advertising. It's there was a very interesting video out years ago. But the future of work and the future of business from a trend perspective is about redefining the experience so that the human is as optimum as possible. And to do that, you have to have a system that is optimum as possible. We don't have the level of automations that we could have yet. But thinking is a proper job today. And right now there's not a lot of time to think, but there's a whole future of work where people will be supported in that thinking space to continue to solve problems.
Great. Well, thank you for giving us kind of a broader perspective. Certainly appreciate that. Now I want to kind of narrow into something that's a little more personal. As a lot of people know, you are the founder and the chief innovation officer at RIDG, but you've also spent a great deal of time running the company as well. But just recently, publicly announced that we've brought on a full-time CEO. His name is Matt Dieter. Hello, Matt, if you're watching. Matt's brought on to help grow the company. What can you tell our audience about the decision to bring Matt on board as a full-time CEO, and what can people expect from RIDG moving forward into 2021?
Yeah, I think that's in. You may have seen a lot of companies go through refreshing, repurposing, refocusing what it is, the work that they're doing, especially in the services space. And so certainly bringing Matt on as the CEO was a decision, because as the founder, chief innovation officer, I've served as the CEO for a long time, but I've had a lot of help, and we'll talk about that later. I've had a lot of help And he is one of the individuals who's helped. Matt has has experience with the Big Four. He started off with PwC. He's also built and sold multiple companies. At the core of it, though, what I think is incredible about Matt as a leader and a CEO is he understands how to create a business, align a system around the story of a movement. And a lot of that has to do with how he and his business partner crafted a whole new movement focusing on women's running. Mm-hmm. And the system behind that, which was really a high growth system, supporting and meeting the needs of what was really resonating in the hearts and minds of women who needed just the simplicity of a pair of running shoes to go connect to their bodies and their mind and be healthy and do something good for themselves. I was one of their clients at the time years ago, which was how we met. And so I think that what's incredible about Matt as a leader is his ability to focus in on the most important tasks that drive the movement forward. And in today's trends, whenever I talk about story matching strategy, it's really a corporation or a business that is connected to a greater mission or purpose for humanity has to be able to back that up with the business system and still make money, right? Because if a business isn't making money, it's not a business. It's a charity. So you've got some certain constraints within that. But Matt really understands how to simplify really smart and how to stay focused, how to automate what doesn't need to be so human, and how to amplify that human experience. He's a great leader. We're really excited to have him on board.
I echo those thoughts. Certainly excited to have Matt on board with us. If you are just joining us, you're watching Virtual Coffee with Ben. I'm Ben Blackman. I'm the Director of Development at RIDG, and I'm joined today by the RIDG founder and Chief Innovation Officer, Michelle Royal. Again, if you like what you're hearing, you want more content from RIDG, you can go to our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. You can stay tuned for more conversations just like this one every Wednesday. Michelle, last time we had you on, I took you through my standard Fast 5 questions, as I call them, to get to know you a little bit better. So you've already answered those, but I have 5 more questions for you. And these are going to be a little more geared towards innovation. You are the innovation guru. So I have some questions that'll help the audience get to know you and how you think a little bit better. So question 1, how do ideas typically come to you and how do you process them? Your head has got to be just full of ideas all the time. How do you synthesize them all? When do your best ideas come to you? Is it while you're getting ready in the morning? Is it while you're out and about? Tell us about that process.
Yeah, so I have whenever we're talking with clients, I have a funny thing. I say, I see innovation all around me. And that's the truth. Ideas typically come to me with purpose. I am inspired by my immediate reality, and I'm inspired by my clients' stories. And there is a specific skill that my good clients and who have become friends have said that I have, which is called synthogenius, which is a synthesis genius, which means there is this, funnel of information that comes into my head, and I have tracks to always ask the question, how can this be, useful? So there are some practices though around ideation, because frankly, when you get a good idea, you have to wrangle that sucker, you got to bring it in and you have to cultivate it and you have to pay attention. And it's not like that idea is the only idea. Entrepreneurs, inventors, innovators, way too many times get obsessed with the idea and they forget that the idea has come to you because it is meant to serve as many people as possible. So you have to have a process to be able to help that idea evolve. So what I do have some practices. I write every morning and every night. I put pen to paper. And that is significant because the act of connecting an object to another object that my brain is connected with allows for that. It just reinforces that neural pathway of making connections. So that's one thing. I also think that what happened during the pandemic through the stress, the intense stress, if you are an executive, if you're a company that is working virtually, you know the intensity of Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. People are not giving themselves the time to rest or breathe. And so I am most productive in my ideas and able to solve challenges whenever I have that back burner time, whenever I can understand and focus and hyper get into a challenge and then step away. Some people talk about it as like, the shower phenomenon, or you go to the bathroom, or you drive your car. We don't have a whole lot of the drive time that we used to have. Or if you're in a big city on the subway, whenever you used to be able to just have that, it's more that transition time where ideas can cook. So we try to design it so that it fits within, I try to fit it within the day. So that's how ideas typically come to me.
Great. Now, this might be a difficult question for you, but what do you believe is the best idea that you've ever had?
Right. So the best, I still think that the best idea that I have ever had, number one, is to ask for help, but that's not like an idea. So the best idea that I ever had was whenever I was at the Sarasota International Design Summit. And I talk about it as an idea that knocked on the door of my heart. So I'm sitting in this conference, and we've talked about it before. I literally had $200 to my name that I gave to the Ritz-Carlton so that I could stay at their hotel. I volunteered at the conference so I could attend. I didn't really feel like I had the reason to be there because I'm sitting next to executives of these large companies who were leading innovation underneath this glass chandelier, but I was absorbing information and learning and being inspired. And on day two, the idea came to me in the form of a question. What if everyone in the world knew their capacity for innovation? And that sounds like a big question, but let me just say it this way and how I understand it. What if everyone knew how to find, own, and share their value? That's how I understand it today. And our mission, which as we continue to go forward over this next year, everyone's going to see some really new, bright, optimistic RIDG because of our focus on how we understand ROI. Finding, owning, and sharing your value is all about return on investment. What that has to do is an individual's ability to know their contribution, either through the innovation process, et cetera. But I mean, I've literally built my life around that question. What if everyone knew? What if they knew how the simplicity and how they fit within the overall innovation process, that it's not just about the entrepreneur, it's also about the risk manager who's driving that product to market at the very, very end. If they could see their whole role in that process of bringing new value to the world.
That's great.
You guys might be able to hear my dog
Oh
in the
yeah,
background.
we got
He's
the
wanting
dog.
to.
It's
He's wanting,
okay. That's all right. We love dogs on the show. So question 3, you talked about the process, right? The taking ideas and then putting them into practice. I'm curious how you specifically validate the decisions that you make, either as it relates to running the business, or the innovation work that you're doing, either
Yeah.
internally, externally with clients. What is your process for validating the decisions that you're making?
Well, so in the processes that we absorb, that we learned, there's rapid prototyping, in which you need 6 out of 10. You basically need feedback from 6 of your ideal clients. And I'm gonna have to walk and let the dog out because he's super
All
whiny.
right.
But
We can take a quick
speaking
pause.
speaking of life in general, we'll just let him out. But that feedback process is really critical. So whether it doesn't matter what decision I'm making, except for, I mean, you can think of some small decisions like, what am I going to get at the grocery store, right? Like that's not it. But when it comes to big decisions, and innovation typically feels like big decisions, you have to know, first off, what it is you're trying to accomplish, to know who you're going to ask. And the first individuals that you should ask around your innovation, or what it is that you think you're going to bring to the market, what it is that you think you have found that you may need to put some ownership structure around, and who you need to, you actually start with who you think you need to share it with. You need to start with that end user customer and get some feedback. And you can prototype an idea from a one page to a mock web page to a mock product and say, I'm thinking about this. Would you use it? How would you use it? There's those kinds of, this is the way we've crafted our communication. Does this make sense? Does it not make sense? And typically, I guess I thought of the question a little bit differently, but I, in general, whenever it comes to strategic decisions, there's getting as much feedback as possible. I can't remember a time in my life whenever I didn't expose my thinking and my system and my ideas to no less than 6 people. So when a challenge comes to me, there's not just one source that I go to. I have a multitude, and sometimes I'll talk up to 30 or 60. And then I have frameworks with which to evaluate both feedback and opportunities, or the potential of what could happen. But when I was first looking at this question, I thought of Desiderata, which is a poem that says, make your decisions wise and quick, and then let them go, and act as if everything depends upon you, and pray as if everything depends upon God, because it does. And so it's a prayer, but the core of it is gather as much information as you can from the right sources, and then put a timestamp on the decision itself. If it has to be done by Friday, make it till Friday. Gather as much information as you can. Make sure it's whenever I say the right sources, it all depends on the context of the decision itself.
Well, that's a great segue into question 4, as you talked about information. At RIDG, what you do, what we do essentially through our innovation consultation is to help solve problems. We help solving problems of our clients. And I'm curious, how do you solve a problem when you're missing information? You talked about how information can be really helpful in making your decisions, validating those decisions, but what do you do? How do you solve problems when maybe you're missing information?
Well, we are always missing information. So let's just go ahead and there's not a single, even in the world of science, there are worlds yet to be discovered. Okay. So what I think is you learn the systems and the frameworks and the methods for being able to identify either patterns or insights. Definitively viewing from multiple perspectives is really, really helpful. I was talking with one of the founders of HSP Group, which is a global they don't outsource, they actually help you manage your global operations. So if you are expanding around the globe, they help you create the systems with a centralized headquarters that creates the efficiencies across the globe. So, your client can have the same experience in Singapore as they do in the United States. And this is a business that came out of the pandemic. So the founding group worked for other companies for a long time and then said, we see this need in the market. Let's form our own company. And one of the founders in the company was saying, so, tell me, I've never been an entrepreneur, never started my own company. I've always had a set of superiors above me or been one of the executives. Tell me what I should be looking out for. So that is a wise person. That is someone who is gathering information based on experience, which, is helpful. But again, I talk about frameworks and tools because, in my opinion, innovation is not rocket science, but discipline is hard. And there is a discipline to the craft of innovation, and there is a discipline to the craft of building profitable businesses. And so we will always be missing information. We have to make the best decision that we can, and then we can pivot. We can change, we can have new information can come in, and we can change. And I think that that's powerful. that we have the ability to transition what we create and what we put out in the world. We have to look at the ingredients of what we have and ask the question, what can we make of it? There's plenty of companies out there that did that. There's manufacturing companies that transitioned into production facilities for essential materials that had nothing to do with that business to start with. There's local breweries that started making hand sanitizer because they looked at their equipment versus the product that they were producing. They weren't beholden to the thing that made them. They were beholden to the customers and what they needed. And I think that that is a really valuable way to look at solving problems.
Right. All right. And finally, this is a big one. What do you believe is the greatest innovation in human history?
To date, I believe that the greatest innovation in human history is the has to do with the speed of information sharing. It has unintended consequences, right? Every innovation has unintended consequences, meaning there's the thing it does really great, and then there's all of the waste it creates. However, it creates a whole new set of problems that need to be solved, i.e., more opportunities for innovation, but the mass production of information. So if we look back, there is certainly the written word in visual text, the Rosetta Stone, the first, translation, written language, that would be one of them. But it really, really was transformative whenever the printing press was created and more people had access to information, to knowledge, which is why today is we're in an interesting time with who do we believe, what do we believe, what is the trust, how do we trust? So local experience where you can share perspectives really matters, but we're in a global world. And so we have to trust that if we have a colleague on the other side of the world, that the experience they're having or what they're translating to us is true. Like validating that information is hard. And yet, to me, it is still the greatest information. So the greatest invention, I would say the greatest innovation, though, would be the internet for today.
Okay. Quite an upset. I thought you were going electricity there, but
although because it's about it's about the translation of information and the internet. If there's a great show about invention and how coding was informed by the computers or the machines that ran looms more so than the printing press itself. And because it was zeros and ones that were coded to create these mass produced patterns that used to be only created by humans. But the internet would be the greatest invention because of its how it has transformed the consumption of information.
Great answer. Well, Michelle, thanks again for joining us. I always love having you on and listening to you talk about innovation and all the great things that are going on in your world. I wish you and your family happiest of holiday seasons. And to everyone out there watching, if you're interested in learning more about RIDG, you can go to our website. It's ridg.com, RIDG. Remember that R is for Michelle Royal, our rock star. You can also go to our YouTube channel, Facebook page, like and share the content. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Take care out there.